something you can just hide. Where would you say that that gold is being stored?
400,000 metric tons are in the Central Bank of the Philippines. There's over 200,000 metric tons in Union Bank of Switzerland. And some of that gold is buried securely in the Philippines as well. Some of it is held in various banks, but the bulk of it is in the Philippines.
So the World Bank holds the note on that gold?
No. It is in a special trust account that was set up by Ferdinand Marcos, and the authorized signatory is a German banker lawyer by the name of Wolfgang Struck, who also lives in the Philippines.
in just the last few days. Karen Hudes studies law at Yale and economics at the University of Amsterdam. She worked in the legal department of the World Bank from 1986 to 2007. Today, Hudes is among a new generation of whistleblowers. She travels around the world informing the public about the secret deals happening inside the World Bank. Hudes is our guest on the show today. We're going to talk about monetary policy and how it affects spending power. We're going to talk about Bitcoin and other digital currencies, including the recent trouble at Mt. Gox. We'll also discuss how the crisis in the Ukraine ties into these other issues and what may happen next in Crimea. Welcome to the show, Karen.
Thanks for having me, Gary. Glad to be back.
All right, so let's talk about money. We got it in our back pocket. We got it in the bank. Some don't have it in the bank. There's digital currencies floating around. What is causing people's spending power to drop? I mentioned the Federal Reserve policies. A lot of people know about the Federal Reserve being a private banking institution. But what about the World Bank? How does that play into the average person's spending power?
The World Bank and its sister organization, the International Monetary Fund, are very special organizations. They are sitting on top of the world's wealth, which was put into a secret account, and it has more gold than anybody knows about. And it is cloaked in secrecy. The bankers do not own that money. It's held in benefit for humanity. And the bankers are refusing to release it. Instead, they're trading on it, stealing from every person on this planet. That's what they're doing, illegally.
So the money that's being held in the World Bank is held by, well, you say it's held by the people, but the bankers are trading on it. Please elaborate.
Okay, the World Bank and the IMF are listed on a special agreement that was signed in 1950 about that. Assets, it's gold. It's more gold than people know about. It's over 1 million metric tons of gold. And the World Bank and the IMF have a special role to play, making sure that that money is spent to the benefit of humanity.
So where's the gold? Some people believe that the gold in Fort Knox has disappeared. That's been in question for many years. Congressmen have attempted to get an audit of the gold in Fort Knox. So 1 million metric tons of gold is not something you can just hide. Where would you say that gold is being stored?
400,000 metric tons are in the Central Bank of the Philippines. There's over 200,000 metric tons in Union Bank of Switzerland. And some of that gold is buried securely in the Philippines as well. Some of it is held in various banks, but the bulk of it is in the Philippines.
So the World Bank holds the note on that gold?
No. It is in a special trust account that was set up by Ferdinand Marcos, and the authorized signatory is a German banker lawyer by the name of Wolfgang Struck, who also lives in the Philippines.
So what are they doing with the gold then? They're just sitting on it?
That's exactly right. And the reason that they're doing that is because they have funny money. They have paper money, and they're using that funny money to charge interest on every single country's currency. That's just a scam. There's no reason for that.
So if they're holding this money, they're charging interest, or they're holding the gold, they're charging interest on this gold. How does this affect the average person and their dollar, the Federal Reserve, spending power, that type of thing?
It has a profound impact. It's the best way to explain it is like an analogy. Supposing you were an heir, and the person who was supposed to handle the will was taking the money you had inherited and was not giving it to you. And so you had to go hand to mouth, and you were really very rich.
So the gold, explain now this gold, how is it the people's gold? How did this gold come into existence, and why is it belong to the people?
That's a very good question. This is gold that started out in Solomon. And then the Spanish conquistadors took the gold from the Aztecs and the Incas. And then between the war, World War I and World War II, a German general named Yamashita went around and he told people that they would be better off giving their gold to him for safekeeping and he then issued promissory notes, which carry interest. Those notes are denominated in gold. There are about $210 trillion worth of them, plus the compounded interest. It's now in the quadrillion of dollars that is owed by these banksters that say we owe them money. No, they're the ones that are the ones in debt.
So how do the people get the gold back? If it's their gold and it was taken by these bankers, how do we receive it?
That is the question. And they're just sitting there illegally and refusing to relinquish it. Part of the problem is that this gold is cloaked in secrecy. But in the last month, Wolfgang Struck has been publishing all of the documentation. So it's there for people to see. We have the originals. And people just have to make sure that the banks do what they're required to do, which is release the world's wealth on the debt.
So who's behind these dollars and the push to bring them to the fore?
It should be all of the American citizens and all of our allies and all of humanity, which is served by a stable system underpinned by the rule of law. This is in everybody's interest.
Now, you mentioned the Ukraine and Russia and the conflict between East and West. How do you believe that this conflict is going to play out there?
Well, that's one of the reasons I'm so grateful to you for having me on the show. It really all depends on whether people understand that the media that is giving them disinformation is owned by the Federal Reserve and this system of control. There are 3 mathematicians at the Federal Institute of Technology in Zurich, Switzerland, that have modeled and looked at what the capital markets are, 43,000 transnational companies, and they found out that there is one system of control that is putting the same directors on the boards of all of these too big to fail banks. They're really one bank. That's why we have the LIBOR scandal. That's why we have gold price manipulations. And it's really up to humanity to realize that they're being hoodwinked, that when they turn on the news and they get the news from the mainstream media, they're just being fed propaganda.
Just to show you the bill of lading, how much is
$240 million. Oh my goodness. Is it million? Billion?
billion?
Billion? 240 billion?
Only one shipment.
It's for $987 billion. Can we show the
You are rich beyond compare.
No, this will save the world.
The world. So, Mrs. Marcos, are you saying you're open to giving some or an amount of this one to the country, to the Filipinos?
Not only the Philippines, but the world.
On April 9, 1973, Marcos said, "My earthly goods have been placed in the custody and for the disposition of the Marcos Foundation dedicated to the welfare of the Filipino people." During a talk show in the U.S. TV, the week following the bombing of the New York Twin Towers, President George Bush was asked this question: which is the richest country in the world today? With a smile he said, "The Philippines."